Hi, this is Simon McCormack from Plexxi. I'm going to show you today our vSphere network pod expansion demo. You'll see that we have two pods, pod A on the right hand side and pod B on the left hand side. Pod A has a couple of Plexxi switches, unconfigured, and also a couple of ESX servers, which is Fred and Barney. In pod B, a couple more Plexxi switches and another ESX server, and we'll get into those ones in a little while. First thing I'm going to do, as you'll see, I'm going to plug in the Ethernet cable for one of the switches. In a few seconds it's going to have built the cabling topology and we'll be able to then zoom in to see what it's built. You'll see a lot of activity on the bottom as well, where there's jobs being run. This is Plexxi Connect in action, running and configuring the network for us. You'll see some of the jobs are talking about VLAN groups. It's actually configuring VLAN groups on Plexxi. If I zoom into switches now, we'll find that appropriate port VLAN configurations have been done. Where does it get that from, you might ask? Actually, it's getting a lot of this from vCenter. So in the vCenter configuration, we will look at either of these hosts, ESX hosts, Fred or Barney, and we look at the vSwitch configuration, you'll see it's actually configured to be on VLAN 100. Plexxi Connect supports both distributed or standard virtual switches. In this case, it's a standard virtual switch. We've derived the VLAN information, so if I go into configuration on Plexxi, I can now see assignments for VLANs, pod A1, VLAN groups. It tells me it's actually configured VLAN 100 on port 1 on this particular Plexxi switch. So it derived the port numbering itself. It's actually configured VLAN 2 as well, which is for a VLAN we've provisioned for traffic across the environment. In a normal expansion of networking, there can be a lot of cable moves, a lot of complex networking equipment that needs to be in place to be able to expand the size of your network. With Plexxi, you can actually do it with two cables. So I can actually stretch this cable from the first pod to the second pod and this cable back. So you'll see now I've basically connected it together and there's basically 4 switches that will come through in Plexxi control. So just by swapping those two cables, we've actually expanded our network capacity quite a lot. Plexxi Connect is still running and you'll see work happening below, lots of jobs going. Plexxi Connect has detected the new switches and it started to configure the new network. So I've not only expanded this network using the 0 configuration, I'm now configuring the new network as well. Plexxi Connect has information on the ESX server in pod B. So normally in vCenter you've got to go to vCenter and tell vCenter about a new ESX server. We'll see actually Wilma has appeared. That was Plexxi Connect plumbing that into vCenter. So actually in this pod not only does network configuration but configures the environment, virtualization environment as well. Now let's do some fun things. I'm going to do some vMotions in vCenter across a congested fabric, and I'm going to show how Plexxi Connect can pick that up and actually reroute traffic around the congestion. So I stopped Plexxi Connect. So I'm going to do a vMotion now. We'll grab one of Fred's VMs. I'm going to move him to Barney, which is across that congested path. And so it's now doing a live migration. And from the vMotion percentages, we know 25% means it's prepared and ready to transport across the network. Anything more than 29% means it's actually sending data across the network. In this case, because this path is so red and congested, it's not getting anything through. In fact, we're pumping 30 gig through this pipe, and I guess it's dropping a lot of it. So this vMotion is just going to fail. So now you see it's failed, and I can restart Plexxi Connect, and we're just going to try that vMotion again. Now we go back to test VM2, and we just go migrate again. So now it's going to try again. I'm going to see activity on the bottom left-hand side again. This is Plexxi Connect picking up the vMotion. It's then built a dynamic path for it. That dynamic path is going around the congestion, and if you follow the utilization on the right-hand side, set at 38%, actually it's already completed. If I refresh vCenter, you'll see that it's actually done. So in summary, what I've told you is we have been able to zero-touch configure a network. You never saw me type a single command. I never went to a single GUI screen and configured a single thing in this entire environment. It was 100% automated. We derived information from vCenter to be able to configure some of this data, but basically it was zero-touch configuration. We expanded the network with a simple cable move. You think in a traditional network environment, to expand the capacity of your network often involves multiple networks and many, many cables. In this Plexxi environment, it was actually 2 cables that gave us expansion of the network and redundancy. And finally, we showed you that we have a great vMotion use case where you can fail vMotions if you have congestion in your environment. With Plexxi, we can recognize it by plumbing into the APIs and fix the problem before you ever see anything in your environment. And that concludes the demo.